Welcome, Serie A fans. Benvenuti to the Total Football Analysis Serie A podcast. I am your host, Daniele Proch, and I'm joined by Chris Mumford, the EPL podcast host. How you doing, Chris?
Fabulous. So glad to be here. Great week of Italian football.
I agree. COVID chaos, though, as we wait to see whether Ronaldo tests negative and can join Juventus for the game against Barcelona. Inter as well is waiting 3 players to have them back after testing positive for COVID about 2 weeks ago. Last weekend, Gianluigi Donnarumma, starting goalkeeper for AC Milan, joined the list of COVID players that tested positive in Serie A. And this morning, Lazio, 5 players, including Immobile and Luis Alberto, won't travel to Belgium to play Club Brugge in the Champions League game on Wednesday. But we'll talk about COVID and the impact of the new COVID protocols on the finances of Serie A later on. Now, Chris, we must discuss what happened over the weekend, beginning with Zlatan Ibrahimović. He has a scoring frequency of 1 goal every 45 minutes, 6 goals in 3 games. Anything to add, Chris?
You know, the naysayers keep doubting him, and he keeps scoring goals. I mean, what can you say? He doesn't have the speed that he used to have, but he's figured out how to be at the right time at the right place. Very economical in his movements, and he's a goal scorer.
He is. Milan-Roma 3-3, an eventful game, lots of chances, mistakes, and penalty kick controversies. But let's reconstruct the goals in order. The first goal by, obviously, Zlatan Ibrahimović. So it started with a ball that was delivered to Rafael Leao, the left winger. And what I liked about the play is the run by Theo Hernandez from the back. He overlapped him full speed and basically stretched the Roma defense. So now they had to drop. Rafael Leao changed his mind. He cut inside. So Ibrahimović picked out a very nice curly pass for Ibra. The ball bounced, was out of reach for Roma defender Mancini. Was not out of reach for Ibrahimović. Sized 14 shoe. He just stretched his right foot and put the ball in the back of the net. Mirante couldn't do anything. Or could he, Chris?
I don't know if he could have done anything on that one. That was beautifully timed, onsides, no question about that. You kind of wonder if the defender should have stayed a little closer to him, but you got the striker behind you, you got the ball in front of you. You can't look both ways at the same time. Just brilliantly played.
So the goalkeeper Mirante, as the ball bounces on the ground, do you wait for Ibra to take a touch, or at that point you have to shift because if he doesn't touch it, you still have to, to save that kind of cross?
So my take on it would have been to step out and get as big as you can and hope that you get lucky in terms of a block. In that situation, especially given how quickly things are going, that's the only option, and you hope your position gives you a little bit of luck.
What about risking to cause a PK if you come out too fast and too big? Let's say Ibrahimović touches around you and then you just roll over him, causing a PK.
Daniele, when I played, I didn't miss the ball. I just get it. So there wouldn't be any PKs. But no, I'm kidding. So I think in those situations, obviously, if you feel that you can get the ball, but it was the angle in which it was coming in. You had a defender that was in front, supposedly, right? You kind of got to trust your defense, and in that particular case, defense lets you down in goalkeeping and in life and football. You got to play the probabilities, and I think he did the best he could given those circumstances.
You know who missed the ball was Cyprian Tatarusanu, Milan's second goalkeeper, who had to step in goal after Donnarumma was kept out because of COVID. What happened on the first goal? Corner kick, came out, probably yelled Mia, which is mine, literally, to call the ball, but missed it, swing, but couldn't reach it, and then Dzeko just had it in an empty goal. What do you see? That was it pressure maybe?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say as far as really any position, he's been riding the pine forever, right? He hasn't had a lot of playing time, certainly not recently, so it's hard to get into a rhythm. That ball comes in, it's placed at the 6.5 yard line, which is borderline go, no go as a goalkeeper, right? If you're bigger, maybe push it out to the 7-yard line. But in that particular case, there was a player from the other team had jumped up, kind of obscured his view as he was going up for the punch, and he missed it. And Dzeko was right behind him to seize the opportunity. He does what he's done hundreds of times. So yes, that's unacceptable for a goalkeeper. Can I understand why it happened? Yes, I can. You know, he's coming off the bench and saying, "Okay, put the gloves on and go." And guess what? Your timing's a little bit off on those, right on the 6-yard line.
Well, seeing how essential Donnarumma is for AC Milan now, his agent Mino Raiola is gonna want to bump his contract, which is expiring at the end of this season. He's gonna want to bump his contract very high. The second goal of AC Milan started again from Leao, very pacey winger, attacked the end line and then made a cutback pass where Alexis Saelemaekers finished with his right foot. The second goal of Roma came of a weird goal, a weird penalty kick call. What happened? So Mkhitaryan took a shot with his left foot. Tatarusanu saved it, but wasn't quite able to deflect it outside of the small box. And what happened is Pedro from Roma and Benacer from Milan, they both raced to the ball. Benacer seemed a little in front, and what he did, he stepped on the right, trying to shield the ball from the incoming Pedro, and Pedro just bumped on Benacer back. Most people were thinking that it was a PK for Milan because Benacer was in front. In fact, the commentator, if you rewatch the highlights, said, "What is the other way?" That's what he said when the referee called the PK, but apparently the referee interpreted this way, which is nobody had possession of the ball, and Benacer, by shifting right, he caused Pedro's run. He interfered with Pedro's run, hence the PK. PK was transformed by Jordan Veretout. Not even 10 minutes later, another soft PK for calling the game. Çalhanoğlu went down almost unconvincingly, asked for a PK. It was given. Zlatan, another goal, the 6th of the season. But Zlatan was also responsible for the Roma's equalizer. I don't know if you remember, but on that corner kick, he tried to clear the ball with his right foot. And as he swung, the ball hit the outside of his foot and went far post where Kumbula was able to convert that in. I don't think that it went as it wasn't as noticed as people would say, but Ibrahimović had a bigger role even in that goal.
Yeah, I tell you, I'd still rather want Ibra in my starting 11. So you got to take it for what it is. And I'll tell you something. AC Milan is still undefeated, right?
They are
so far. What is it? 16 games now.
17 straight Serie A games without losing.
Yeah. So they had some big travels. It was Thursday, right? In which they were traveling back. It's such a tricky time right now. It's this whole season's going to be an absolute mess. You just talked about COVID at the top of the pod.
Mm-hmm.
Lazio is probably going to be starting their second 11, potentially dipping into their U23. So we're going to see scores like this going forward. I don't think it's going to be one team scoring 90 points for the season and being a flat out winner. It's going to be a dogfight. And I'm going to be honest with you. I love that. I want that to be absolutely, just ruthless. I'm a big fan of parity, and Serie A has been about oligarchs, basically the big three teams. And I'm glad to see that there's some folks that can mix it up.
And this year is especially competitive because we can see that Juventus have not quite fully embraced Pirlo's idea. There's still a little bit of things to fix because they this past weekend they tied their third consecutive game. They couldn't go past a 1-1 draw against Hellas Verona side that was very solid defensively. They had the best defense in the league with 2 goals conceded in 5 games. Juventus, to be honest, were a little unlucky. They hit the woodwork twice. 1 goal got ruled out by VAR due to a tiny offside by Alvaro Morata, and then they missed a lot of chances. On the other hand, we have to give a shout out to Verona goalkeeper Marco Silvestri. Chris, he came up big. He's 29 years old. He's been doing well, but do you see him ever having a chance at Italy national team?
Unfortunately, I don't. He's a real journeyman. He actually spent time in Leeds for a few years,
Mm.
and the rest of the time with various Italian Serie A and Serie B teams. He had a great game. The woodwork was kind to him, and he's going to remember this match because he had his work cut out for him, and he showed.
And Juventus were able to equalize by I would say, a fantastic ball by Dejan Kulusevski. I loved how he took the ball on the right side and then he started to spin, to twist the defender right and left. He cut probably 3 or 4 times, and then, like Messi will teach, just pass the ball into the bottom corner, and that was beautiful from the young player, from the best young player of the past Serie A season. You know who's not that young anymore but keeps making a difference, Chris, is Romelu Lukaku. Another goal for him, 5 this Serie A season. He also scored twice in Champions League last week against Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Mhm.
Like Ibrahimović, what do you say about these guys that keep the defenders busy? They score, they fight, they assist. Just essential. If he were, for some reason, for COVID injuries, whatever, to not play for Inter, I think that Inter will kind of lose reference of how do we play now. Like we are started to become very reliant on Lukaku. Would you agree?
Completely. I think the two Milan teams have a real issue in their high dependence on
Mm.
their striker. There's not someone that can step in and fill the gap very closely. More, nor is there a midfield that's going to be able to kind of pick up the slack. So you want to keep Lukaku and Ibra cryogenically frozen between games to make sure that they don't break, right? So wheelchair them around to make sure they don't have any problems between games. But I think Lukaku's. I love the way his game is developed. He was pacey when he was younger. He's still fairly young. He's in his late 20s right now. But I just think the intelligence of his game and the slowing down to speed up, all these little tricks and the different ways in which he's scoring goals. I really think that he could certainly go into to any side in Serie A, and probably could go into most sides in the top teams in Europe and get a starting role.
So usually what happens to the physically structured guys like Ibrahimovic, like Lukaku, we can include Andrea Belotti in this list. It usually takes a little longer for them to be in shape. And that's why at the beginning of the season, maybe they're not as efficient, as decisive in what they do. But it looks like this rule does not apply this year. Maybe it's because of all that happened. And obviously it was a weird end of the year. It's a weird start of the season, but they look completely in shape to me. I don't know. I don't know about you. I don't know if you can see any similarities with what's going on in England.
Well, it's pretty easy. Lukaku is a fan of food, and was known for being a little heavier when he was in England. But when he came to Italy, interestingly enough, even though I think the food is much better,
It
Conte
is.
basically gave him an ultimatum, right? And he slimmed down, and he stayed slimmed down, and it's shown. He has to be the best of his game there. But to me, it's the head that's been really, really developed. He really understands the position, and
Mm.
what that you tell me, that intrinsic ability of knowing when to turn or not to turn, when to take that one touch back from where the ball came from. He's playing like an absolute maestro right now. What's your take on that?
And you mentioned the position. Conte's 3-5-2. He always wants a big guy on top and then a faster guy, crafty guy underneath. He's been doing that at Juventus. He's been doing that at Chelsea, with the national team when he used to play Pelé. Um, that position, when you play with two strikers, also allows him to kind of range all over the field, because in counterattack situation, he's not only big, he's fast. He's defenders, you see them trying to grab his jersey. They just can't. He's just too strong physically, fast. So I think the position is helping me a lot. The fact that Lautaro, he works well with Lautaro Martinez, good chemistry, because you can tell if you look at Inter, when one of the wingbacks, one of the three center backs, when they have the ball and they pick their head up and they're looking for Lukaku, all the players are already thinking, okay, the ball is going there. I'm going to go close to him for the layoff. And then when the layoff happens, now the player is receiving the ball facing forward, and now you have runs from the opposite wing back, from a midfielder. Like, I love the runs that Barella makes, going through the middle of the pitch, the run from the other striker, and that works so well. So I think that the position, he enjoys it a lot. Physically, I hope for Inter he'll be able to keep up the entire season. It's gonna be a challenging season from a physical and mental standpoint, because again, he's playing right now as we're speaking. Inter are playing in Champions League against Shakhtar Donetsk, and you mentioned the travel. They have to go to a very cold place and play again, so that's gonna play into it. Lazio back to winning habits with a 2-1 win over Bologna, thanks to their two stars, Ciro Immobile and Luis Alberto. You know who was specifically happy this past weekend was Insigne's parents. It's probably their best weekend of football of their life, as they watched both their sons, Lorenzo and Roberto, score in the same game for opposite factions, though. First, Roberto scored for Benevento, and then Lorenzo equalized with a magnificent left foot strike that ended up top 90. Napoli went on to win that game. Chris, you are a parent. If you see both your sons score in the same game, what you gonna do? You just sit back in the chair and says, wow, I love life at this time.
No question. I mean, you want to see your offspring score on the same day. I would never dream that it would be in the same match, right? Particularly for opposing teams. And just a great story. You sometimes wonder if there are these writers for Serie A in the back that write these scripts out, but that is stranger than fiction, right? No fiction writers would say, no, that's unrealistic. But hey, what a beautiful, beautiful weekend for the family.
And to make it even more romantic, Roberto Insigne, who now plays for Benevento, he was at Napoli. And then he obviously went on to his own path, playing in Serie B. And last year he got promoted with Benevento, and now he scored his first Serie A goal against Napoli, against his brother. So, yeah, like you said, there must be someone behind the scene writing this down. And Napoli would have a perfect record if it wasn't for the game that they lost on forfeit against Juventus on October 4th. So right now they have 4 wins, 1 loss. But still, instead of 12 points, they have 11, because besides losing the game on forfeit, they also got 1 point detracted from their standings. I don't know. We could discuss this a lot. What do you think about it?
Well, I think what I would focus on is their goal production is really impressive, right? They're, I think, 3rd in the league with 14 goals. Their goals against is 4th or 5th in the overall Serie A with 5 goals. So they're sitting in 2nd place, and they walked away from 3 points with the Juve game. So, if I were Milan, I would say thank you, Napoli, for the gift. And I think one wondered, were they a legit contender for the title? And I think the jury's still out a little bit, but they're doing all the right things. They're making all the right moves in the beginning of the season. So hats off to them on that.
And you mentioned Napoli only conceded 5 goals, but 3 of them are the goals that they technically considered because of the forfeit, because the game that they lost was a 3-0 forfeit. So on the field, they considered only 2 goals so far, which would put them as their best defense alongside Verona.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm. Atalanta, what's going on, Chris? Lost 3-1 at home against a Sampdoria side that was very lethal on counterattacks. You tell me what's going on there.
Well, I think it's a glass half empty or half full. To me, I think Atalanta is really their youngish team. They're not a big budget team, and they're playing games every 3 days. And they won last week, and they've got a really exciting game that's going to be starting shortly. And they took their eye off the ball over the weekend. I will say that I am keeping an eye on things because, yes, they've scored 15 goals, which is top 3 or 4 in the overall Serie A, but they've given up 12 goals, which is pretty worrisome, because that puts them, in top 5 in terms of most goals conceded. So their defense worked well enough. We've said in the previous pods that was going to be something we were going to look at. That was going to be a soft spot for them. And guess what? They gave up 3 goals this match, and they walked away with the loss.
Yeah, and Atalanta in the past years, they would always score more than what they considered, and lately that's just been an issue, right? And like you said,
can I tell you though? I feel like there's a little unlucky this match, because the XG
expected goals
was 2.3, right? And Samp was 1.67. Atalanta took 20 shots to Samp's 6, but the only thing is only 5 were on target versus Samp's 4. So what I'm really struck by is, even though Atalanta had the ball 2/3 of the time, they weren't able to convert, right? And Samp did twice of what their expected goals are. And you tell me, I mean, there are those days where you try to do everything right and you still get the wrong outcome.
Yeah, it could be a moment, because I am confident that they have top level finishers at Atalanta. Muriel, Zapata, Captain Gomez himself, Ilicic, Malinowski scores goals as well. Miranchuk, the new signing that scored in Champions League last week. It could be a moment. If numbers are there, if the chances are created, I think that Atalanta will be back on track to the Atalanta that we know. In the other matches, there were a lot of goals. Sassuolo tied against Torino 3-3. Again Caputo, again Belotti. They both have 5 goals in this Serie A season. Sassuolo right now are 3rd in the league, just behind. They're 11 points, tied with Napoli, and just behind Milan with 13. On the other end of the table is Torino, second to last, and they just picked up their first point of the season. Fiorentina Udinese 3-2 for Fiorentina. Gaetano Castrovilli with the brace, a name that Roberto Mancini, the coach of Italy national team, should definitely keep an eye on for the Euro 2021. Parma Spezia 2-2 after a late PK drama, and Cagliari Crotone finished 4-2 for Cagliari. Crotone is currently last in the table with just 1 point. In the meantime, Chris, October 24th, last Saturday, there was a new decree from the Italian government not allowing fans anymore at stadiums. So even the 1,000 fans that were allowed inside of the Serie A stadiums now cannot attend games. President of Serie A, Paolo Dal Pino, and the president of FIGC, Gabriele Gravina, sent a letter to the government saying, listen, we already lost 200 million euros last season, and we're expected to lose another 400 million this season, mainly due to ticketing revenue. What can be the solution? Do you see Italy considering something similar to the project Big Picture that England is currently considering?
Well, I guess let me make one observation about public health, and then let's talk about comparing with the UK. I'm really struck by airports are still open. You still have a fair bit of traffic, people moving to and fro. 1,000 fans in 45, 60,000 person stadiums, to me, doesn't feel like a tremendous public health threat. So I'd love to see the science that supports the fact that you can't even have 1,000 fans. Now, the truth is, 1,000 fans isn't going to make that 400 million euros go away. So that's kind of one thing I'd like to explore. I know that in the UK, it's even more backwards in that cinemas are open and they're televising matches, but across the street, you're not allowed to have fans or a de minimis number of fans. And that's a head scratcher for me. As far as Project Big Picture goes, I think the good news is in the UK, things are pretty fussed up, right? So you've got the 4 divisions. In the Premier League and Championship, you don't have a salary cap. League One, League Two, you've got basically salary cap implemented. And for the most part, in those lower leagues, they depend on spectator and sponsorship income, just like Serie A, B, and lower do as well. The tricky piece is going to be, will Serie A or the Premier League share more money with the pyramid down below? And is it fair to ask Serie A teams to give up money out of their pocket, of which they're losing money, to help those clubs below them? And I'm a little concerned because people don't give them much money away for free for nothing, right? I mean, yes, there's a legacy of philanthropy and stuff like that. But I think that you've got all these different interests. The Serie B, the top 5 or 6 teams, have more in common with the bottom of Serie A, right? And it's Serie A is fluid, right? There are people that are coming and going, except for maybe the top 8 or 10, right? So it's really hard to herd all these cats in to make a decision to go one way or the other. And I don't get the sense that the Italian government has the will or the interest to step in on this. And I'm worried that they're going to literally be 3 or 4 Serie A teams in the lower end. They may just say, hey, we can't finish the season because we don't have the money. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, so what the Serie A president and the FIGC president, by the way, FIGC is just a governing body of football in Italy, they asked the government for reforms because in the past decree that came out, that was in effect starting Monday, they didn't see proper regulation, I guess. They think that the protocols are still unfavorable for football, which contributes, which is the sport that contributes the most to the country's economy, right? So what they're asking is, I was reading Gazzetta dello Sport, which is Italy's daily. One of the things that they were asking, it was to maybe halt the contributions that Serie A has to give Italy, at least until the end of the emergency. I don't know how feasible that is. But speaking of lower leagues, even the presidents of Serie B, which is the second tier, and Lega Pro, which is a third tier, they have invoked the help of the government. They have voiced similar concerns. Serie B president, just on Sunday, I was reading on Gazzetta dello Sport, he said, we contribute to a lot of money and we give it's a league that gives jobs to a lot of people, independent contractors, service managers. So we need the help. And if that help doesn't come, there is a serious risk that some clubs will go bankruptcy. They're going to have to cease to exist. Now, I don't know about, like you said, whether Serie A will be willing to share or to help out the lower leagues, and what form would this help come in. But it's very chaotic with COVID cases spiking in Italy. There is this emergency. Everybody's fearing the second wave, another lockdown, which was terrible from a mental standpoint from the Italian citizens. Do you see yourself any solution, or will we just have to wait and see how this develops?
Well, I think in these chaotic situations, number one, there has to be a strong leader emerge. And I just don't know where that is going to happen in Italian football. I literally don't know. I'm not skeptical. I just don't see clear folks. And the reason why is because in the Premier League, where you have a lot of very strong intentioned people, and you had Man United and Liverpool basically come up with Project Big Picture, which was immediately dismissed and considered outrageous. But I think we need to take a look at all the points and say, that is unacceptable. This is acceptable. What can we give to them to help us survive? I mean, it's an existential threat. It's not a, hey, we'll just kick this can down the road. There's not a bank that's going to lend money. And, the interesting piece is that clubs don't seem to perish. They just go bankrupt and then they're reinvented with a new owner. But that's really disruptive to all the employees and the families and the small businesses around that. And I'm hoping the government thinks, hey, our indecision will lead to a bunch of bankruptcy. That's really disruptive to local communities in a time where the economy is already quite bad. So it might be wiser to spend a little extra money now and float folks for the next 6 months without even more people being laid off. And we still get to keep the beautiful game of football to watch on the weekends and during the week and any other time they can jam games in.
During the week, you said it right, because during the week there are European competitions. 5 out of 7 Italian teams won last week, either in Champions League or Europa League. Only Inter tied and Napoli lost. As we are speaking, Inter just finished their game against Shakhtar Donetsk. They tied 0-0, and Atalanta is about to face Ajax. Lazio today traveled to Belgium to play Club Brugge tomorrow on Wednesday, but 13 players are out, as reported by Sky Sport, either due to COVID or injuries. And the manager, Simone Inzaghi, said it's a tough situation for everyone. We all think it's COVID, at least for players like Immobile and Luis Alberto, but they just haven't yet announced it. Juventus will play Barcelona tomorrow, waiting on the testing result of Cristiano. If he's not playing, Chris, would you expect them to settle for something like a draw because Juventus maybe are currently struggling without Ronaldo? Or you think they're going to go all out trying to pull off 3 points from this game?
Well, I think I'm angry at the script writers because Messi, Ronaldo, my bet is it's not going to happen. And it's such a heartbreaker. This was the perfect setup for that. But right now, both teams are walking wounded, either COVID or injuries. Coutinho is out, right? Barca has a bare cupboard at this point this year. They've got teenagers running around on the pitch who are absolute superstars, hopefully in 4 or 5 years, but they're not the finished product. And so I'm expecting probably an unattractive game, probably where all pistons aren't firing. And I hope I'm so wrong, because this is one of those matches I had circled when the schedules came out. I mean, how exciting can this be this time of year to see Barca versus Juve? They're suffering from similar problems though, right? Juve is a year older. They've tried to do some refreshing. Barca got rid of some of their, I think getting rid of Suarez was the worst thing they could do. That Suarez is co-leading the league with 4 goals in La Liga, and Barca's only got 9 goals, right? So you don't have to be a mathematician to know that those goals would come in really handy, particularly in situations like Juve.
Well, all we can do is sit back and enjoy the games. Always a pleasure discussing calcio with you, Chris. We'll see you guys next week after round 6 of Serie A. A presto.